So here we are. I put the engine on and I had to take off all those little rocker arms that I put on there on each cylinder. You can see I had to take them all off because there was no way on God's green earth that, I know those will get painted, those little edges will get painted, the cowling was going to fit on there. So I might try to, on some of the lower cylinders that will be seen, put a little detail on there. But I decided I may as well start with the cowling and get that moving because that's the last sort of persnickety piece to go. The Lewis should be kind of fun to make. Anyway, that's going to fit on there in multiple pieces. These are usually pedal designs or they're like this, and I prefer these. Um, I get a better shape initially when I use these. And these are kind of the way Merrick's models usually are. And you see, they just nest together once you cut out all these pieces. And you have to take each one and kind of turn it with a nice um, brush handle. Excuse me, a nice brush handle, just to get it to sort of curve in the right direction. And I find it's easier to kind of over curve it and then put things together. Now each of these little pieces has a very, very fine, it's kind of nicely done, really fine line right in the center that you can line up on each successive piece. A lot of times these models have a bright, like a real dark line. Looks like, you took a Sharpie marker and drew it. These are on the cowling are really delicate because, of course, you don't want to see them. They look kind of silly with a line through everything. In this case, what I'm going to do is fill this and paint it. But I appreciated that from this particular design. So anyway, it's a nice thing because you could actually use the cowling just as we're building it, and a lot of people prefer to do that. What I do on these are end joined. There's no tabs, no nothing, and that sounds impossible, but it turns out if you just take it slow and easy, it's quite easy to do, and it isn't as hard as it looks. You just basically have to cut very accurately, and you start to put these pieces together in little bits at a time. Notice I just put some glue on that middle part where that line is, and you start just kind of letting that dry and then slowly working your way around the perimeter. And I built a whole submarine like this one time, and dang if it didn't work. I didn't have to put anything on the inside. Um, the tabs weren't needed. Now you could put tabs on here for strength, or if you felt like you needed them for positioning, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. It'd be easy to do. In my case, I didn't bother because what I'm going to do with this is fill the inside with super glue and sand everything and prime it and go through all that nonsense, kind of like the ME410, because I want to get the cowling to look nice and smooth. I want it to look like a piece of aluminum, not a bunch of pieces of paper put together. Now, however, um, some people prefer that look because they want it to be known as a paper model, and I can see why. Um, I mean, it's very artistic, and if you do it right, you can barely see the seams. I mean, in my case, you can still see them because I'm not terribly skilled, but I'm trying to be very careful around here and just trying to match everything up. You're not overlapping, you're trying to just butt join them. And with that Alien's glue, which dries pretty dang quick, everything is surprisingly strong, and you just work your way around very slowly. And I do find that this works fine. Sometimes I'll put some glue on the inside as well, just to sort of, keep it keep it together. But you don't even have to wait forever. I mean, I put that piece on, I'm already going to put on the other side. Um, so, as long as you put little bits on at once, at a time, not try to do the whole thing, it works quite well. And again, what I'm looking for here when I put these pieces on is trying to line things up. Now, the very ends didn't line up well, and all I'm going to end up doing is cutting those when I get it all finished. But um, I'm just trying to get it so that, like I said, they're not stacked on each other or planked. I want them to be actually look like one piece, one continuous piece. You don't want to step at the joint as best as you can. Like I said, I'm going to sand these a little bit anyway, so any steps will disappear. But you want to start it off as good as you can. Start it off as nicely as possible. And again, if you're Polish, I've seen these suckers put together flawlessly, and they have they gloss them or they put them on some kind of kind of clear coat on them, and they really carefully tamp them down with round tools and spherical tools, and my gosh, you can hardly tell there's a line in there at all. So it is doable if you're actually talented. If you're not, you do it like I do it. And since this is more of the same, I sped this up, but I'm just going to leave it in here and show you. I'm kind of tweaking these all the way around, and then I put a little glue on the inside, and then I decided to start over on this part with the main cowling, again matching up the middle line first, and then very carefully starting to tuck this in all the way around, and it's again, not that difficult, and you can get the whole cowling done in one sitting without any problem. It's not even tedious. I can't say that it is. But you can see I'm kind of squeezing it a little bit to make sure that they're not stepped. And then I put some glue on the inside to just sort of make it nice and rubbery and things. And then I even went in with the back end of that brush handle and kind of rolled over the edges a little bit. Now I got this set. I'll slow it down because now I'm going to put this piece on the front. If you can finally grab it, you doofus. And again, start at the middle. Start with the piece that's lined up. And when I squeeze that larger piece, it actually matches pretty dang well. So that's all I did. Put this together the very same way. And there it is done. And I have to say, even as is, it would definitely be a usable piece. There's nothing wrong with that. It isn't going to be a bad thing. Like I said, it's a bummer. I had to take off those all those cute little details on the ends of the cylinders, but that's going to line up. There's a couple little holes that are going to be right in the center line, and this is going to line up nicely. And actually, like from the sides and over the top and stuff, it looks like a Newport cowling. It looks really good. It looks like a horseshoe cowling. So I'm very pleased with it. It's gonna be nice when it's done. Absolutely. Now, I don't like those steps. That's me. So I do want to get rid of those. And the best way I found to get rid of those, which I do on most of my models, because you see they're stepped a little bit. And again, if you were better than I, you can actually form them so they're more rounded. In my case, I take the brute force approach, and I fill the inside with super glue, and I brush it out a little bit with an old beat-up stick or brush or toothpick or something, just to make sure all those seams are covered with super glue. And put a pretty good helping in here, because as I sand, I might sand through the paper, and if I hit the super glue, it's just like sanding a piece of hard plastic, and it will sand and fill and paint and be just fine. Because you might run through the paper because the paper is thin. So I concentrate on where those seams are, and I just kind of smash that glue all the way around. In this case, I got actually a pretty big pool in there. It was an accident. I didn't mean to make that much. But then again, it makes sense. It'll be nice and solid. So I took a little, like I said, beat up brush and just sort of made sure that all of the joints, all the butt joints, have a fair amount of super glue on them, just to make sure it's going to be nice and solid, because it's going to be one solid piece of glue here in a couple seconds. And it's going to give it some rigidity and help maintain the shape a little bit. There's going to be one more piece we're going to put in, and I'll show you. I didn't know how it fit, and then it turns out now I think I got it. Anyway, then the magic is a little bit of accelerator, and you can see as I dab it in there liberally, the chemical reaction occurs. It turns yellow, and that becomes a really hard polymerized polymer there, and that's going to be easily sandable and holding all those seams together. Going to be just a nice, going to end up with a nice cowling. And I usually check it to make sure it's straight, which it is not twisted. And then here you can see I'm dabbing it and my finger's not sticking, so the glue is dry. The accelerator did what it's supposed to do. And now all you do is start carefully sanding. So my wife got this thing, and she didn't want it, which is great. because I got to have it. Not only is it pretty, but it's a nice sanding stick. And you just very gently roll it around. You let the sandpaper do the job. Don't push. As you do it, you might be able to put a little more pressure on things. But all I'm doing is rolling this over along the seam, and then I'm trying to make sure that the edges come together and are straight. But I'm trying to roll these over so that it will end up ultimately, when I spray it with primer and sand it some more, it will look like a complete, solid, nice piece of aluminium rolled. So I just keep on doing that. I'm going to use a couple different grits of sandpaper at some point. After this, I think what I'll probably do is just hit it with primer and then keep sanding it. But you can see I'm just making sure it's okay. And if you look closely, it is starting to roll over. Looks nice. That's all right. It's going to be good. Now, this piece, I didn't know what it was for. I said that B. I put it on with, I put some wood, 1/16 balsa against it, and it goes in there. And what that does is give you the right shape for the cowling. And I didn't even know that was I saw that part on the plans, but I was like, what is this for? Well, that's what it's for. So what I did now was glue this on with super glue. Put a little bead of super glue all around the edge. And the reason I left that the wood in there and cut the little triangle out, I cut off most of the waste came out, but this way I can have a nice thing to hold when I actually butt it up in there into underneath the cowl, because this is going to be up against the bulkhead and it's going to be right on the edge of the cowling paper. And what it's going to do is give it that horseshoe shape, and it should make it strong, and it should make it the correct shape. So I'm not going to be guessing on how that's going to fit. But see, with that extra piece of balsa wood in there hanging down, I can grab it with my little fat fingers, line it up in the middle with those lines, and then just tack it down and make sure that it's even. In this case, I was very careful and actually worked really well. And the glue goes pretty quick. I did end up giving a little shot of accelerator just to make sure it glued. And then I was going to cut this out like a ring, like you're supposed to. The problem is that cutting that thin piece out, especially in balsa wood, it's probably going to snap. It's probably going to split. And like I'm holding that cowling, it's a lot of pressure on there. So my guess is that would snap in a heartbeat. So what I decided to do was take a large amount of the waste out. That's that triangular cutout piece. Then I went out into the garage and dremeled out the rest with a little round sanding barrel and just drilled it or sanded it out until I came up to that line. And that way I didn't have to cut it, which would probably be very difficult. So that I'm just going to sand it out to that very edge, and it worked a treat. So that's just pointing out there's the little thing I used, and you can see I got rid of all of that up against it. Then I'm taking off the excess paper that's kind of stuck there to the edge and just kind of getting rid of that. That is going to look fine and clean once I pull it off. And now I didn't have to worry about cutting that and breaking it. Now it's just nice and solid. It's glued to the paper. It's giving the back end of the cowling the right shape. Slick. So that's a piece that I didn't even know was in this kit. And like I said, I saw it, didn't understand where it went. Now I got it because it had a red letter on it, which means it's supposed to be on cardstock, thicker cardstock. And so it makes sense that it's being used as a former. And since it's going to butt right up against the bulkhead, it'll be hidden, it'll be fine. And when I paint everything, you won't even know it's there. So that's pretty slick. It's pretty nice. So the cowling is well on the way. The next time you see it, it'll be sanded and primed and practically ready to go. To check it, I stuck it on here, lining it up with those two holes on the top, because there's two little filler things, I guess, that go up there. Get it over the cylinders, and that's the way it's going to fit, and it just naturally sits really nice. It's going to glue in nicely. It's going to be fantastic. Now the last little piece of the cowl, once I get that all filled, is on the cheeks there. The cowling, notice the ring is over. It's past the fuselage. See that? It's outside, and then that line is where this little piece fits. So this is like a little cheek covering that fits, and I guess it was kind of like streamlining or something. And I actually shaping this, I think, incorrectly. I got to work on how that works, how that fits. I'm just trying to show you kind of generally give the idea of what it's going to do. But with the cowling on, that's going to fit um, somewhat like that. I'm going to have to curl it over and put it onto the rear end of the cowling. Oops, the other way, I think. Yeah, like that. Um, and then the straight piece is going to go up against that line on the fuselage right there. It looks terrible now, but I think once I actually shape it correctly, I think it'll look pretty good. I just got to figure out what it looked like on the real airplane. But overall, you know, the engine, the cowling, she's coming together, looking really good. And I'll gussy up the engine a little bit before I put on the propeller. But next time you see this, I think the cowling will be in really good shape. It might even be painted. And then we'll put it on. And then it's the Lewis. And then a couple more details, and we will be done.